Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I am Raphael and I am here to review season 4, episode 3 of The Real Housewives Who Were Completely Drunk of Salt Lake City. So we start the episode off right where we left off with everyone arriving at the Trixie Motel. Mary, she's looking around like, Trixie, what's a Trixie? Trixie Motel. She's there to greet them, to give them the layout of the hotel, but then she drops a bomb on them by telling them, well, I actually have 2 other guests already waiting for you, but I'm gonna go because it's getting too hot out, so goodbye. And then she runs off, and then out comes Dumb and Dumber. Whitney and Angie K. They come out, and Meredith, she freezes up in the confessional. She's like, Angie? And you just know that Angie K, before she was even, introduced to come out, she was sitting behind the door telling Whitney, oh, Whitney, this is gonna be so iconic. I can't wait. Hold on, I think Trixie's calling us. Okay, that's our cue, Let's go. Hey, everybody, hey guys. Meredith goes in for a hug and she tells her, oh, I didn't know you were gonna show up on my trip. And I wonder at what point the production decided to make Angie K a full-time housewife. Like, was she just filming as a friend of and then got promoted? Because, I mean, I get it. On the Housewives, regardless whether you like each other or not, the cast needs to be together for the cast trip. And she is part of the cast, but it's just very awkward and uncomfortable to watch her basically beg everybody to let her on the show. Like, please let me hold the snowflake. Please let me be a part of the cast. Like, that's what it's looking like to us, at least. Like, it's just very desperate. And then on top of that, she hugs Mary and she's like, oh, hey, Mary. Hey, how are you? Mary, in the confessional, she's like, who's Angie? And I completely forgot that, yeah, Angie and Mary, they never crossed paths because we were just introduced to Angie K, unfortunately, last season, and Mary wasn't on last season. So, yeah, this is their first interaction, and what an interaction. She doesn't even know you. Eventually, they're going around the hotel to pick out rooms. Meredith is even more annoyed that Angie K already picked out her room, one of the bigger rooms at that, along with Whitney. And again, if I was Meredith, you're much better than me, because the second that I would have seen Angie K, I would have been like, oh, hey, get comfortable. You can sit by the pool. I'm going to your room and I'm going to go pack up your stuff and I'm throwing it out the window along with your mattress. It's going in the pool, okay? Like, no, you're on my trip. I'm not going to be cordial if I don't want you to be here. But eventually they all settle into their own rooms, and then we see Angie K and Whitney. They're by the pool, and Angie K already starts off by telling Whitney, you know what, Whitney, I just don't understand why Meredith has this thing against me. If this is supposed to be a healing trip, why is she not healing the friendship with me? I don't get it either, Angie K. I thought this whole trip was supposed to be a big bonding healing journey so we could all heal, because this group needs a lot of healing after Jen Shah. But for some reason, Meredith wants to be a big bully, and I don't like big bullies. And you know what? She's not going to be able to play with my Tickle Me Elmo later tonight. So as they're sitting, Lisa Barlow, she comes out and she's like, hi, Angie. Hi, Whitney. Oh my gosh, don't you guys love this hotel? It's so pink. I totally loves it. What are you guys talking about? So they start discussing how they feel some type of way that Meredith never invited Angie K on her trip, and now Whitney feels entitled that she should be here. And first of all, Whitney, this is Meredith's trip, production's trip, so she could invite whoever she does or does not want on this trip, so you have no say in that. And as they're discussing this, Meredith, she comes out of her room to go to Heather's room, and she walks by them without saying a thing, so they're all looking at her like, and of course, Angie K, she feels some type of way about it, so she tells them, you know what, guys? I just feel that was so disrespectful that Meredith just walked by us without greeting us or saying a word to us. Like, it's just so rude as a host. And again, Angie K, you were not invited. Like Mary said 2 seconds ago, who's Angie? Speaking of Mary, we see her in her room. She's getting ready to come out with them, right? And then Meredith, she goes into Heather's room. She's looking around and she's telling Heather, wow, I can't believe this. I totally love this room. It looks so nice. And Heather's like, so wait, how do you feel that Angie K is here uninvited? And Meredith, she's like, well, you know what? I feel very disrespected by Whitney, because how can you invite somebody who I never invited on this trip to begin with? And for you to show up, it's just very low class. I can't believe she would do such a thing like that. And as they're talking, we see Mary in her room. She's like, oh, Heather has a big mouth. because we could hear Heather talking through the walls. So Mary comes outside to join them, and Angie K starts telling her, oh, Mary, come sit with us, come sit with us. Mary, she ignores her the first time, right? So as Mary is making her way around the pool to sit near them, Angie K again, Mary, come sit with us, girl. And Mary, she had enough. She finally tells her, can you please stop talking to me like that? I don't want to sit near you. Like, so embarrassing, Angie K. Like, wow, nobody really wants you on this trip. At that point, I would have just gotten up. I would have cried. I would have went to my room, packed up my stuff. I would have told production, you know what? Thank you for trying to make me a full-time housewife, but I think I'll stick to being a friend of the show. I'll see everybody back in Salt Lake City. Bye, everybody. I mean, so embarrassing. I was just cringing the whole time, like, ooh, Angie K, but okay. So Mary, she's sitting near them. Like, she's sitting, like, all the way over there. And she starts telling Whitney, so why did you decide to come early on this trip? And I'm like, ooh, Mary, okay. So Whitney, she starts, you know, going on by, well, me and Trixie are besties, so I decided to come early. And I'm like, that's the best excuse you could come up with, Whitney. Like, we all know that you just wanted to be messy by springing Angie K on Meredith in the group. That was your real reason. Now you want to say that it was because you and Trixie are close? So how come you're not hosting this trip to begin with? And why is it Meredith? So Mary, she saw through the BS and she tells Whitney, no, I feel like you were being childish. Like, that's a childish excuse for you to show up on this trip earlier. And then Angie K decides to turn around and insert herself in this conversation by telling Mary, well, first of all, I feel like I should also be a part of this trip if we're all gonna heal our friendships. And before she even finished whatever excuse she was going on with, Mary was just like, no, I'm not talking to Whitney's representative. I'm talking to Whitney. I wasn't talking to you. I'm like, damn, Angie K, it's only been like, what, 10 minutes into the episode and you're just getting dragged left and right by Mary and Meredith? Like, ooh, but so everybody reunites by the pool and Meredith has these goodie bags for every one of them, except Angie K, with these shirts inside that says, tricks, not treats. It was a cute shirt, I guess. And she's passing it out to everybody like, here you go. Here you go. You take this. One for you, Glen Coco, and none for Gretchen Wieners. Bye. She gives no bag to Angie K. Why? Because she never intended on having her on this trip. So of course there's not enough bags. And Angie K is offended by this. Like, oh, she's still not talking to me. Like, so childish. And again, you were never intended to be on this trip. So Meredith explains the first activity, which is a trusting shopping experience where they're going to be paired off with the person that they need the most healing with together. And they're going to shop for each other's outfits. And they're going to have to trust each other to make each other look good. And we all know how most of them end up looking in the end. So I'm not sure if too much trust was put into this activity. So then I believe Meredith, she goes on to pair Monica and Mary together, which, okay, that's understandable. But me personally, I would have put Mary with Whitney. That would have been interesting. But she put the cousins together, Whitney and Heather, and of course her and Lisa together. And who's the odd one out? Angie K. I would have told her, you know what, you could stay in the van. Or you could stay with Trixie. Maybe Trixie needs a, like, assistant or something. But she tells her, well, you know what, Angie? I mean, if you want to take a part of this, you know, activity, then you can. You're just going to have to pick another group, I guess. I just didn't expect you to show up. Again, for the 100th time, if I was Angie, I would have just felt so uncomfortable this entire time. Like, wow, nobody really wants me on this trip. But then eventually they all split up to get ready for this activity. Angie continues complaining not only about Meredith, but about Monica as well, being a bad friend to her and sticking up for Meredith and making her the problem. And I guess that the walls in this hotel really are thin from what Mary told us earlier about Heather's big mouth, because Monica, she overhears this conversation and my Colombian queen, she comes in and she's like, so were you talking about me? You know, and at this point, Monica has nothing to lose. She has no husband, no money, no brother-in-law, no church, no nothing. So she's like, you know what, let's fight. And Angie's like, well, I just don't feel like you're being a good friend by sticking up for Meredith. I just don't like that. And now you're making me the issue. And Monica was just like, no, I'm telling you this as a friend, that your behavior is too much, but I would do the same thing to everybody else in this group. And she shut the whole conversation down. And Monica, I like you. You know, third episode and, you know, kudos to you so far. So they get on the Sprinter van and arrive at this clothing store, which I think it was a thrift shop, at least for Monica's sake, I hope it was. You know, Monica walked in and asked the employee, do you have a clearance section? I mean, I would have done the same thing though, so. But I really, really enjoy this activity and their interesting choices for each other. Obviously, you can tell that Meredith still does not like Lisa deep down inside from her choice. But I also enjoyed Monica and Mary's friendship that they're forming together. I really like them together as a duo. And it seems that Mary really enjoyed her company, unlike Whitney. But she's looking at Monica, you know, pick out certain clothing. And she's like, obviously, I'm going to have to pick out the clothing for both of us, which honestly is not really saying much because if you think that her choices are terrible, what does she see in her closet? But she did pick out a nice bedazzled jacket for Monica, and she was also wearing a yellow jacket that was cute. So both of their choices were nice. Angie K. Now, regardless whether you like her or not, she was smart for attaching herself to Lisa and Meredith's group because anybody else, the camera probably wouldn't have been on her, but obviously because of the tension between her and Meredith, the camera is gonna stick to her. So she's looking around. She's also like, guys, I kind of want this outfit. What does everybody think? I think it's kind of silly. Meredith is just looking at her like, anyway, Lisa, so come out. Like, poor Angie K. But Lisa, she comes out in Meredith's choice of clothing for her. And Lisa looked like she was 2 seconds away from doing the, oh, Shakira, Shakira, Beyonce, Beyonce, beautiful liar. Like, I mean, I kind of saw the vision just a little bit. I mean, if I close both my eyes, I kind of see the vision, but I don't know. I mean, the top was kind of, the bottom was just kind of, and Lisa's coming out in the confessional. She's like, obviously, Meredith still hates me. Then Meredith has the audacity to tell Lisa, well, I was inspired by Mugler. Meredith, you know that is not Mugler. That's Mugler. That is not Mugler. It's Mugler. And on top of that, Lisa was actually looking out for you because she came out, I'm waiting for her crazy outfit, and she was just wearing a basic yellow romper. And I'm like, oh, okay, so obviously Lisa, you know, she sees it for her, but not the other way around. And then Heather and Whitney come out. Whitney, I did like the clear coat that she had on, the hat, I'm not really sure what that was. Heather looked like a biker, but all together though, minus Mary and Monica, they all look like a bunch of rejected Barbies. Oh, and then Angie K, she comes out in this beautiful dress and she's like, look guys, look, I'm going for a Grecian goddess. Like, look, it's so nice, right? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, she is the best dressed out of the whole group right now because you chose the outfit for you. Let Meredith have chosen something for you, it'll be a whole different story. They get to this restaurant, they're sitting at the table. On one side, we have Whitney, Meredith, Mary, and Lisa in the middle. On the other, we have Monica, Angie K, and Heather. They start ordering their food and drinks, specifically espresso martinis. And that right there was the beginning of this whole night becoming a complete hot mess. Whitney starts off by saying, we should play some type of game, like a game that we have to reveal a big secret about ourselves. So I'm thinking, okay, the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, they're the most scandalous housewives out of any other city. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna get something juicy, right? Meredith, she starts off by saying that her and her parents used to visit her grandparents in Palm Springs when she was younger. I'm thinking, oh, okay, yeah, what were they doing in Palm Springs? Money laundering? Were they committing a crime, robbing banks? Like, what was going on? But no, that was it. I'm like, really, Meredith? Like, if you're gonna keep that energy for season 5, good luck. Mary says that she used to have a bird, but it flew away. Lisa says that she used to write in a journal when she was younger. Like, all of these secrets are so lame. You know, I want to know if any of you slept with the pastor in the Mormon church, if any of you are secret drug dealers, if any of you really truly love your husbands. Like, the possibilities were right there, but it wasn't until Monica opened up her mouth and says, well, you know what? Most of you guys' secrets are boring. Let me give you one. So I slept with my husband's brother-in-law for 18 months. Everybody was shocked, except Mary. Did anybody see Mary? She picked up her drink. She said, cheers. Of course, she likes to keep it in the family, right? Meredith in the confessional, she says, well, you know, I know that I was accused of sleeping with half of New York, but you know what? I draw the line with brother-in-laws. I'm like, Meredith, are you trying to tell us something? And then instead of questioning her and wanting to know more about that, Whitney, she wants to change the whole thing. Like, oh, you know what? No, that's too much. This whole game is becoming out of control. Let's play something else. I'm like, it was right, the topic was right there. What, would you rather talk about the bird or Lisa's journal, Whitney? Like, you know, and that's their issue on this show. They drag out the most pointless topics sometimes instead of actually questioning, like Jen, for example. Nobody questioned Jen to the full extent that they could have. The way they're not questioning Monica. Like, here's a good topic, but yet they're letting it slip out of their fingers. Like, oh no, that's too much. Let's do something else. And I'm like, since when is this too much? All of you are scandalous. The next game that Whitney comes up with is called Cold and Fuzzy, Warm and Prickly. And I'm like, what kind of Sesame Street bullshit is this? Like, Whitney, if you don't grow up and stop being a little girl and name these games after, like, adult names, like, you should have called it something like Things I Like and Dislike About the Bitch Sitting Next to Me. Warm and Fuzzy. That just sounds fucking stupid. So then I believe the first person to go was Heather. Heather, her person is Angie K. She says that the thing that she likes about her is that they go all the way back to high school. They have a long history. But the thing that she doesn't like about her is that she's always constantly up somebody else's ass. And I'm like, wait a minute. Doesn't that sound like your storyline from season 1 to season 3 with Jen? But now you want to point your fingers back at her. And Lisa, she was good for jumping in and she says, wait a minute, Heather, so are you saying the same thing about you and Jen? Should we not be friends with you just because you were up Jen's ass? And I'm like, yes, Heather, should we not? But Heather, she's like, no, I just don't like that she's constantly just always up Lisa's behind. Like, you know, at my book thing, you said, oh, I'm not going to get your book unless Lisa's in the book. And then in the confessional, she says, I just don't trust girls who suck the biggest dick in the room. And, you know, Heather, if that's the case, then you wouldn't trust me either then. You know, she wouldn't trust a couple of us, you know, not just me, but. So then we move on to Meredith, and her person is Whitney. She starts off by saying that anything that Whitney does always has a good intention behind it. Since when, Meredith? Since when? And how many espressos have you taken so far for that to come out of your mouth? You know, Whitney of all people. I mean, even this whole game that she started, even this doesn't have a good intention. She knows what she's doing by causing tension between everybody at this table, but yet you want to say that. Okay, and then right before she even says her prickly, Whitney interrupts her and she's like, is your prickly that, you know, that I invited Angie K with me on this trip? That right there is secure that Whitney knew what she was doing. She was trying to, you know, not beat around the bush. Like, okay, let's get it started. We all know that you have tension with her. Let's fight. That's what she wanted. Eventually she gets that. But Meredith, she was just like, no, that is not what I was going to say. Well, you know what? I guess that could be a part of it too, but that's not what I was going to say. And that's all that Mary had to hear to jump in it herself. Mary, she says, Meredith, that's not what you told me earlier. I'm like, wow, how many martinis is everybody taking at this table? She threw her friend underneath the Sprinter bus and she says, no, you did tell me earlier that Angie K being here was bothering you. So why are you trying to backpedal now? Meredith, she was just kind of backpedaling, but kind of admitting it like, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, no, but not yet. Until Monica yelled out and said, okay, that's enough. Let's talk about me. I need to earn my snowflake for this season. So, Lisa, you know, Lisa, I love that you're here in this outfit and you're being a good sport about everything, but, you know, I just don't like that you're constantly complaining about your ring being $6,000. Constantly, you know, she's been complaining about it for the last 2 episodes. And I just don't like that. I don't appreciate it as a single mom of 4 daughters. Now, Monica, you know, and I just said it in my last review, how her being in a different, you know, level money-wise to the whole cast, how was that going to play into this whole show? And here we have it. She's complaining that basically Lisa is privileged because she has money and Monica doesn't. And her being a single mom of 4, you know, she should take notice of that. And again, Monica, I mean, I understand it, but at the same time, this is the real Housewives. This is not, oh, let's throw a pity party for me, you know, having to have 4 daughters, being a single mom, et cetera, et cetera. And on top of that, you yourself, I mean, you kind of caused that on yourself because you were in a marriage and then, you know, your husband divorced you because you cheated on him for your brother-in-law, which you were so proud of, but now you want to weaponize it against somebody else. Like, oh no, boo-hoo, you need to take my feelings into consideration. Nobody on the show has to take your feelings into consideration because you knew where you were signing up for, Monica. You know, this show is about lavish lifestyles, money, wealth. yourself. So you can't come on and say, can you please not flaunt your house, your big mansion, your cars, your expensive jewelry, your clothes in front of me, because I'm struggling and I have 4 daughters. So please don't do that, because then the whole premise of the show is going to become something else. And that's just not what it is. So, and at the same time, Lisa, I would have told her to shut the hell up after the second time of her complaining about the ring. You know, it's one thing about losing the ring, and then it's another of her constantly saying, oh, it's 60,000, 60,000, 60,000. That probably would have gotten annoying after the second, third time. So I agree with her on that. Angie takes the floor and she wants to have a toast with everybody to this Greek word that represents being called fake. AKA she's talking about Meredith and how she doesn't appreciate how she's been treating her this entire trip. And she wants to express how she's feeling. Meredith, she's not having it. On top of that, the Queen of England rose from the dead and went inside Meredith's body, because all of a sudden her speech starts changing and shifting a little. She starts telling Angie, well, you know what, Angie, I really don't feel like talking to you right now because you had said on a public platform that you did not want to be my friend anymore, and I do not appreciate that kind of language anymore, Angie. Angie was just like, I never said that. I never said that I didn't want to be your friend anymore. Can you please pull up the receipts? And if looks could kill, I mean, Meredith, her eyeballs were popping out. I thought she was going to fly across the table. She's just looking at Angie like, I do not want to talk about your feelings or this friendship anymore between us, Angie. We are done. We are not done, because Angie's like, oh, but you had no problem being my friend and calling me for help about your houses or your dusty jewelry that nobody buys. I'm like, ooh. I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe she does deserve like a little corner of a snowflake. But Meredith was quick with it. She says, well, if you need to be paid, Angie, I will write you a check for the 1 hour that I called you, but I need you to go. This is my trip and I need you to go right now. Angie's not leaving anywhere. She's like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. And the audacity, right? Like, this is her trip. Productions trip, right? And she's not going anywhere. She's like, no, I'm staying right here and I'm gonna be staying in your friend's house. Cheers to the girls' weekend. Cheers. But Meredith, all of a sudden, she starts calling security, right? AKA a bunch of random waiters in the back. She's like, security, I need you to come and escort her right now. This is my trip and she needs to go right now, right this second. You are an ugly person. You are nobody's friend, Angie. And I'm like, Meredith, what is going on? Meanwhile, Heather at the end of the table, she's laughing. She's like, I'm looking at the table. She has like 5, 6 empty glasses of martinis, espressos. And I'm like, ooh, Heather, that is not going to end well for you. So Meredith, she's seeing that Angie's not getting up. So next thing you know, she gets up. She starts walking towards the waiter. She pulls on the waiter's arm. She's like, excuse me, sir, security, excuse me. You need to escort that woman right there from the table away, and you need to escort her out. This is my trip, and she is messing everything up. Please escort her out right now. Security, I need you right now. The waiter is looking at her like, if you don't get off me, I don't even get paid this much to be dealing with a bunch of housewives bullshit. But he tells Meredith, okay, I'm gonna do everything in my power for you, okay? I'm like, poor waiter, have him at the reunion, please, and give him a raise, because what? So then Meredith, she comes back, Heather's laughing, she's like, oh, she just walked off with a British accent all of a sudden. And then Meredith, she continues on with Angie. I cannot believe you, Angie. You are garbage. You are ugly. You are an ugly person, and I do not appreciate you. You don't know. All of you guys are going to regret all of this. If any of you want to continue being friends with her, you are going to regret it, because there are children out there whose lives are going to change. And I'm like, now, wait a minute. She was already losing me, but she just went completely left, talking about children and disabled children. And Whitney's just looking at her. And Mary in the confessional, she's like, you know, Meredith, maybe you shouldn't have taken that last drink. Now, if Mary is saying that you have an issue, then, you know, Meredith, I need you to pull it back. I saw on TikTok recently that she did some interview talking about this moment, and they asked her, what was that about? Why did your accent change? She says that after her second drink of wine, that's when she loosens up and she gets a little drunk and she gets buzzed and she takes on somebody else's accent, which I'm not really sure whose, because nobody at the table is British or English or anything. So I'm not really sure where that came from. But Monica jumps in and trying to defend Meredith by telling Angie, enough, you're doing too much. Stop, what are you saying? Now see, Angie, if I was you, I would have turned to Monica and I would have told her, stop grabbing onto my wrist and mind your business. You see, everybody else at the table, they're minding theirs. You do the same. This is between me and Meredith. You're still new around here. Don't forget that. I mean, I'm still new too, but still. So Meredith, she continues spiraling out of control. She's telling Angie, you are ugly, you are an ugly person, and I want you to leave. I want you to leave right now, And for a second, I just expected Meredith's head to go spin around in a 360. I mean, it was so scary. She gets up, she starts crying. She's like, no, I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this right now. No, if all of you want to be friends with her, it's okay. It's fine. It's okay. It's no problem with me. I'm gonna leave. I'm leaving. I'm not doing this right now. So she's walking now. She's crying. Lisa goes after her, trying to grab onto her, trying to calm her down. Outside in the parking lot, Meredith is just having a full-on breakdown. Lisa's trying to, be there for her by saying, you know what, baby gorgeous, calm down, relax. Do you want a Kit Kat or a Diet Coke or something? I have some in my purse. Relax. We've all gone through a lot the last couple of years in this friend group. And, sometimes things happen like this. Meredith, did you look at the look that she was giving Lisa? She's like, I'm like, Meredith? I was scared. I'm like, what is going on here? And she interrupts Lisa and she's like, well, you want to talk about the nastiness from Angie? You want to talk about this nastiness, the rumors? You want to talk about that? Because we can talk about it. Does she want me to talk about his husband? I'm like, you want to talk about the what? I'm like, Meredith, just a hot mess. I kept rewinding this whole entire dinner scene back and forth. Like, what is going on? What's happening? How did everything escalate so quickly like this? Like, it was so hilarious. I was dying of laughter. The whole entire episode, actually, from beginning all the way to the very end. But, and meanwhile, Heather, she's still inside. She's falling apart. Eventually, Lisa, she gets her back into the restaurant. Meredith, she tries to sit down, but as soon as she sees Angie, she starts up again and she starts cursing her out again. And at this point, regardless whether Angie is annoying, thirsty, desperate, this, that, and the third, maybe we do need her on the show, because if we removed her from this episode and this equation, maybe we would have never gotten this whole entire episode, this whole entire scene. So maybe we do need her after all. And just when you thought that the chaos was over, it's not. They bring it back to the Sprinter van. And we all know that the Housewives of Salt Lake City, they're infamous for their Sprinter van rides, right? So they're going home. Meredith, she's crying on, I believe, Monica's shoulder. She's like, no, because it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be real bad. I know a couple of things that it's just not gonna be good in the future between us. And I just keep trying to decipher like what exactly she's talking about. Lisa, she's like, what exactly are you talking about, Meredith? Can you say? Meredith is just like, no, I can't. I do not want to discuss right now. I don't want to discuss this right now. And I do wonder, what exactly is she trying to say? I mean, she brought up disabled children and she talks about Angie's husband, that she knows something about him. So obviously there's something that we're not getting. But eventually Whitney, she's sitting next to Meredith and she's like, Meredith, honestly, I just feel like this is just a defense. Every time that you're put on the spot, you always want to make up random scenarios. And I'm like, ooh. I'm like, Whitney, you clearly see that this woman is falling apart and now you want to kick her while she's down. And speaking of being down, Heather, she's in the corner of the bus. She's also falling apart. She's like knocked out. She's drifting back and forth. I just already know that she's going to wake up with a terrible hangover. And I don't think that Meredith is avoiding talking about anything specific with Angie K. I just feel like she genuinely does not like her and she didn't expect her to come on this trip, because why? She never invited her to begin with. It was you that sprung Angie K on everybody else by surprise. And now you're surprised that Meredith is upset and pissed off that Angie K continues asking her this entire trip so far. Why are you not talking to me? Why are you not talking to me? When she made it very clear that she does not like you. But again, nobody's accepting that answer. So if it wasn't for you, Whitney, we would have never gotten any of this. So, thank you, actually. So they finally get to the hotel. They park the van. Meredith, she's like, no, I'm not doing this right now. I'm going inside. I'm not doing this right now with you, Whitney. So she walks out. Lisa walks out behind her. She needs to pee. Angie gets out the bus as well. And we're left with Monica, a drunken Heather, Whitney, and Mary. Next thing you know, Mary and Whitney get into it. And you can just tell that Mary has been holding all of this in since season 2. And she tells Whitney, what are you doing? You're still acting like a little girl. Like, what are you doing? Like, you need to grow up. Like, you need to grow up. What are you doing? Whitney, all she could say is, well, no, I'm not a little girl anymore. I'm a big girl. I was just defending myself. And I'm like, really, Whitney, you want to cause all this chaos and this is the best defense that you have against Mary? All right, so then Mary, she continues on. No, this isn't really who you are. Like, this whole thing is an image. Like, we don't really even know who you really are. And you tried to come for me and my family. Ooh, and that's when we take it personal. You know, she went from defending Meredith to now, wait a minute, you came after me and my family, and now we have a different issue. And she starts telling Whitney, you came after me and my family, you came after me. And you said that, you know, you were scared of us because you were accusing me of being like a pornographer or something like that. You accused me of being a pornography. Monica, who's sitting right next to Whitney, she pops up and she's like, oh, and I'm listening to Mary like, what do you mean that she was accusing you of being a pornography? Like, what does that mean? Is that code word in Salt Lake City for something else? Is that a deleted scene from season 2 that I missed? But even Whitney was looking at her like, no, I never called you a pornography. What are you talking about? I never accused you of doing porn. Mary, she's looking at her like, what? I never said that you accused me of doing porn. I'm like, Mary, what is going on? Whitney, what is going on? And then the next thing you know, my goodness, because if I was not already laughing this whole entire episode, this was the cherry on top. Because Mary, she looks over at Heather, who's falling apart. She's passed out. She's knocked out. She's completely drunk, right? She's like, Heather, what was the thing that Whitney called me and accused me of? And then Heather, she was like this, right? Completely knocked out, hat on her head, just a sloppy mess. All of a sudden, she was resurrected from the dead. She's like, she called you a predator. Like, the fact that Heather had enough energy to muster up and get up, like, wait a minute, no, we still have a show to film. Yeah, she said predator, I'm going back to sleep. And then Mary was just like, exactly. You called me and my family a predator. And I think that she did call her that on season 2. I forgot why she called her that, but I do remember her calling her that at some point. And she just told her that she is not going to continue calling her names and getting away with it. So eventually that was that. Whitney had nothing to say. Mary gets up, she gets out the van. Monica gets out the van. Whitney, this was your biggest mistake this whole entire episode because, trigger warning by the way, because we're going to talk about throwing up. Heather, she's getting a little nauseous. You could tell that, you know, something's about to come up. Whitney goes and slides the door closed on the Sprinter van. And I'm like, oh, Whitney, what are you doing? So next thing you know, we hear the noises, and then we hear the gagging, all this and all that. We hear Heather throwing up. And then next thing you know, Whitney, she starts banging on the door like, help me, open the door, open the door. The whole screaming of Whitney and her voice of whining and Heather throwing up. We see the driver, she's running around and she has some high heels on too. She slides the door open. Whitney jumps out like, oh my God, oh my God. The whole entire scene was just so hilarious. And I felt bad for Heather, but Heather, oh my gosh, she was just throwing up all over the place. She was throwing up into this bag. And I think that she missed the bag because there was, you know, it was leaking all out on the floor between her legs. And, you know, I mean, it happens. You know, we've all been there at one point. Not me, but somebody has. But, whew, Whitney, she runs out. That was that. And Heather's just left there, you know, with the bag like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I can't believe this. But, you know, it happens, Heather. It's okay. But this, and I wonder who cleans that up. And, you know, at this point, they traumatized 2 Sprinter van drivers at this point. You know, the one from season 2 and now this woman here. Like, just a mess, but the whole entire episode was so hilarious from the beginning all the way to the end. I feel like this is probably the second best episode to the second season when Jen got arrested. That being the first one, this one being the second, because this whole episode was just crazy from beginning all the way to end. And you know, we're only on the third episode this season, so could you imagine what's there to come? But let me know what you all thought about this whole entire episode and the rumors and the husbands. And let me know what you all thought about this whole entire episode in the comments. Bye, everybody. Mwah.